So on Monday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, did something you need to pay attention to. So there is a group within HHS called the Advisory Committee on Vaccine Practices. Now, I hadn't heard of this group before, but basically all that they do is they're an advisory committee within the Centers for Disease Control. They basically set vaccine practices for the country, right? For doctors, schools, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a group of pediatricians, immunologists, other doctors. These people are appointed by a president, but they're not political appointees in any meaningful way. They're doctors, by and large, and experts on your immune system. So on Monday, Robert F. Kennedy wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in which he announced that all 17 members of this panel had been fired. Now, he said they had been retired, but you get the idea. He said that the group was, quote, plagued with conflicts of interest. He said, quote, without removing the current members, the current Trump administration would not have been able to appoint a majority of new members until 2028. Now, that is true that a lot of these people's terms were up in 2028. It's also true that Biden did appoint about 2/3 of this board, this Advisory Committee on Vaccine Practices board, in his last year in office. But again, there are several things Kennedy said that aren't true. One, this group has an extremely aggressive and transparent operation when it comes to conflicts of interest. So when he says the group is, quote, plagued with conflicts of interest, he doesn't cite what those conflicts of interest are. He vaguely references that they get money from the pharmaceutical industry. That is not true. When he says that they were last-minute appointees, again, it was in the last year of the Biden administration, and I will remind you, these are people who are not political appointees. Okay, so yes, they were appointed then. Look, this is a couple things. One, this is directly counter to a promise RFK Jr. made during his confirmation hearings to Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. Cassidy said that Cassidy, who is the leading senator on the HELP committee, which includes HHS, said that he would consult with the senator on filling key roles on vaccine boards and that he would maintain the ACIP without changes, according to a February speech Cassidy delivered when he voted in favor of Kennedy's confirmation as HHS secretary. To be clear, that's the exact opposite of what Kennedy is doing. Now, Cassidy posted on Twitter, on X, after Kennedy fired these 17 people. He said, of course, now the fear is that ACIP will be filled up with people who know nothing about vaccines except suspicion. I've just spoken with Secretary Kennedy, and I'll continue to talk with him to ensure this is not the case. Well, pardon my skepticism, Senator Cassidy, but he promised you he wouldn't change this board, and he just got rid of every single member on it without your consultation or your okay. So the idea that he's now going to listen to you in terms of who he appoints next is sketchy. And who he appoints next, look, they have a meeting. This group has a meeting at the end of the month to consider a series of vaccines and diseases and how to approach them. The administration says that meeting will go forward, which means that basically you have 2 weeks for them to pick 17 new people to put on this panel. That means these people are not going to be heavily vetted, right? They're just going to be put on there. And let me hazard a guess here, okay? My strong sense is that at least some of these people will have views on vaccines that are at best described as vaccine skeptical. Remember, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is anti-vaccines. I know he says he is skeptical of vaccines. I would argue if you look at his record over time on this issue, whether it's the COVID vaccine or others, he is anti-vaccines. He has helped foment conspiracy theories about them, including that vaccines can cause autism. Totally false. And even in his first 5 months in the job, he's taken a number of steps to defang the vaccine efforts in this country, right? He has taken steps that make the vaccine consensuses in this country that undermine them. When he was in front of that HELP committee in his confirmation hearings in the Senate, he did everything he could to downplay his anti-vaccine views, insisting that he would stay with accepted practices. He's clearly not doing that. Now, people who are pro RFK Jr. will say, good, the vaccine stuff in this country is out of control. The COVID vaccine was sold as something that it's not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I would argue that vaccines in this country are a very good thing. There is a lot of established science behind them once we get beyond the spin and the conspiracy theories. And this guy pledged not to mess with it. And what he has done in one of his first major acts is get rid of all 17 people on the advisory board for vaccines in this country, and he is going to replace them in a 2-week span with his own picks. And those people, trust me, will not be, in my opinion, people with the latest and greatest information on vaccines. They will be people who align more with Kennedy's anti-vaccine views. It is not Donald Trump, LA, immigration, but it is a really, really important story that I hope you pay attention to. Because it impacts our kids, it impacts people like me in middle age, it impacts my mom who's older, right? This is going to have a broad effect on vaccine policy in the country, and I would argue make people even more skeptical about what's coming out of the government in terms of best practices on vaccines, which is a bad thing. All right, everyone, do me one favor, hit that subscribe button. You get a ton of free content, and you help me as an independent news creator. Take care.